to everybody who is just stepping in. And we will get set up with the Genesis Targum will be going through, or Aramaic Targum will be going through chapters 20 and 21, I believe, tonight. I will be right back. Shabbat Shalom for the second time tonight. We are moving on now to the second portion of the evening, the Aramaic Targum. And Michael is here with us. Shalom, Michael. How is your week? How is your Sabbath? What is the down low on your life?
The download is crazy, stressful week, but so glad to rest and relax. Looking forward to the study as well.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and read it. And does everybody have it in front of them? I'm going to be, just in case, I'm going to be dropping this here, this to the Targum Jonathan on Safaria. Safaria is a great resource, by the way, if you guys want to ever use that for anything really Judaism. And I'm going to go ahead and start reading this time. Before we get any further in this, would somebody, for specifically the Bible study in this portion, would someone like to open this portion in prayer? Any volunteers?
Hey, I'd be happy to volunteer. David, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Please do.
Okay. Most High, Yahweh, Elohim of Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, thank you for this online community where we can gather and be unified both in spirit and morals and ethics under your law, your Torah, and your Messiah, Yahushua. Thank you for your Torah portions and your Targums, your translations, the written word that exists both in spirit and truth for us to understand and comprehend and chew on together so we may grow into that strong tree that you've written about in Psalm 1, budding fruit in its season. And I pray that you speak through Noel and Michael as we read your Genesis this evening. In Yahushua's name, amen.
Thank you, brother. I was on mute.
Yeah. I actually started talking and then I realized I was on mute. I get paranoid sometimes because, like, when I give my long presentation and I'm just reading from my text, I'm like, oh, I so hope I am not muted. Hopefully you guys will jump in and tell me one week if I am. So anyways, I'll be reading from chapter 20, and then I'm going to be handed over to Michael. And like last time, I'm going to give Michael the full commentary on chapter 20. He can just go through all his notes, and then I'll be kind of taking the tail end. And then hopefully, if there's enough time tonight, we will. Beautiful picture of the hippo, by the way. I love hippopotamuses. I'll be taking the tail end, and if there's enough time, we'll do chapter 21. So let's get right into it. And Abraham went on from thence to the land of the south, and dwelt between Rechem and Chagra, and had his habitation in Gerar. And Abraham said concerning Sarah his wife, she is my sister. And here we are doing this all over again. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. And a word came from before Yahuwah unto Abimelech in a dream of the night, and said to him, behold, thou diest because of the woman whom thou hast carried away, and she's a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come nigh to defile her. And he said, Adon, shall the son of a people who have not sinned, and whom it is right to absolve the judgment, be killed? Did he not tell me she is my sister? And did not she also say he is my brother? In the truthfulness of my heart and the innocency of my hands have I done this. And the word of Yahuwah said to him in a dream, before me also it is manifest that in the truthfulness of thy heart thou did this, and so restrained I thee from sinning before me. Therefore I would not permit thee to come near her. And now let the wife of the man return, for he is a prophet. He will pray for thee, and thou shalt live. But if thou wilt not let her return, know that dying thou shalt die, thou and all who are thine. And Abimelech rose in the morning and called all his servants, and told all these words before them, and the men feared greatly. And Abimelech called Abraham and said, Why hast thou done to us? Or what hast thou done to us? And in what have I sinned against thee? For thou hast brought upon me and upon my kingdom a great sin. Thou hast wrought with me works that are not right. And Abimelech said to Abraham, What hast thou seen that thou didst this thing? And Abraham said, Because I said in my heart, The fear of Yahuwah is not in this place, and they will kill me for the sake of my wife. But in truth, she is my sister, the daughter of my father's brother, but not of the kindred of my mother, and she became my wife. And it was when they sought to turn me aside to the worship of idols, and I went forth from my father. And I would have seen thee, for were I to give all that I have, it would not suffice or be proportionate. And the words were debated, and Abraham knew that Abimelech had not come near Sarah his wife. And thus concludes chapter 20. Yes, poor Sarah. As Pamela said, Michael, I'm handing it over to you.
All right, Shabbat Shalom again. Pleasure to be here. Honored to be here, actually. So, like Noel said, I'm going to go through all my notes. We're still in beta here, so please let us know if this is you guys like this or you like the back and forth better. Let's go. So I'm not going to start number 1 like I usually do. I'm going to start number 2. So if you're following along, I think Josh posted it earlier, link. But Palestinian says, and Abraham said concerning Sarah's wife, She is my sister, and Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. And Noel kind of hinted at it that he said again, as you know, if you've been following this is the second time. So this is the second out of the third time that there's a sister-wife narrative in the Bible. So broadly speaking, the story outline is this. The patriarch, fearing that the more powerful king will kill him and marry the patriarch's beautiful wife, lies and says she is not his wife but his sister. God intervenes to save the wife, and the king sends the patriarch away, usually with gifts, believed to be rid of the patriarch and his spouse. Okay, so note. So basically, again, here's the 3 episodes. We've talked about Sarah's abduction by Pharaoh, Genesis 12, which was probably 4 months ago. Sarah's abduction by King Abimelech of Gerar, which is right here. And then eventually we'll get to Rebecca's thwarted abduction by King Abimelech. And as you notice, there's 2 King Abimelechs. We'll talk about that. So this is this person's summary of these 5 elements. So there's a migration, coming into a new land, an abduction or threatened abduction. God intervenes. There's a deliverance, and then there's a conclusion. So and that last sentence basically is what I described earlier. Okay, what do you guys make about that? We want to open it up. We would love to hear. We don't want silence and crickets. So when we open it up, so if you have any opinions on that, we'd love to hear it. So this commentary said, which I thought was interesting, political marriages were common occurrences in the ancient Near East, which typically meant that a resident alien would offer one of his daughters to the monarch as a diplomatic action and to protect himself and his family. The scholar named James Hoffmeyer interprets the wife-sister narrative found in the book of Genesis as reflecting that practice. So in his view, Abraham and Isaac were traveling in foreign territories without any daughters to offer the local ruler. They attempted to create similar diplomatic relationships by presenting their wives as potential gifts. As you know, we haven't gotten to Isaac yet, right? So he had no sons. Eliezer was just his servant. So this is this scholar's interpretation. I thought it was decent. Doesn't make it right, but that's what he's trying to say as far as the time we're in. So So the Hebrew word Abimelech means my father is king. And it may be a throne name passed down to the sons who succeeded their fathers in a dynastic line of kings who ruled Gerar. As I mentioned earlier, Isaac will have a similar encounter many years later with another man who's called King Abimelech of Gerar. So is it possible there's multiple, obviously there's multiple pharaohs. Is it possible there's multiple Nimrods, multiple Satans, multiple Abimelechs? Okay. Like the earlier incident with the Egyptian pharaoh, Sarah was selected for harem duty, great honor for most women of this era. A woman chosen for a king's harem could look forward to a life of security and luxury, and she might be lucky enough to bear the heir. Even this is the commentary. Even at 89, Sarah was evidently still beautiful, and some of the church fathers speculated that when Yah restored her fertility, he also restored her youth. Just some additional commentary on that in context. Okay, number 3. Let's going to read the Palestinian this time. It says, and a word came from before the Lord unto Abimelech in a dream of the night, and said to him, behold, thou diest, because of the woman whom thou hast carried away, and she a man's wife. It's funny how the Palestinian sounds like KJV to me a little bit with the Old English. So this will be some rabbis take on. So they taught that Yah appears to non-Jews or non-Israel only in dreams, as Yah appeared to Abimelech in a dream of the night in Genesis 23. Some other examples of that, Yah appeared to Laban, we'll get to that eventually, Genesis 31, in a dream of the night in Genesis 31:24. In Numbers, which we'll never get to, that'll be 8 years from now, Balaam, Yah appeared to Balaam at night in Numbers 22:20. So it just shows that this rabbi's interpretation that he only appears to non-Israelites in dreams. What do you guys think about that? They taught that Yah thus appeared more openly to the prophets of Israel than those of other nations. So they compared Yah's actions to those of a. Again, I don't agree with this. Stephanie was like, "Do you sure you want to say this?" The rabbis compared Yah's action to those of a king who has both a wife and a concubine. His wife, he goes openly, but to his concubine, he goes stealthily. Now, this particular rabbi said, Rabbi Samuel Bar Namani, said that a person is shown in a dream only what is suggested by the person's own thoughts while awake. He quotes Daniel 2:29, which says, as for you, O king, your thoughts came into your mind upon your bed. So he kind of extrapolates that one verse into that really your dreams are your thoughts during the day. What do you guys make about that? Number 4, just the word study real quick. KJV says, but Abimelech had not come near her. He said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? So the word wilt thou slay was also used in Exodus 23:6. It says, you shall not pervert the justice due to your needy brother in his dispute. Keep far from a false charge, and do not kill, or wilt thou slay the innocent or the righteous. I will not acquit the guilty. Let's see, so slay a righteous nation. So basically, both times it's used, it's talking about, will you not kill an innocent? So Abimelech is saying his nation is righteous. Exodus 23, saying you will do not kill an innocent or righteous. Number 5, another word study. It says, said he not unto me, she is my sister, and she, even she herself, is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this. So the integrity of the heart, we've talked about this before. So this is Abimelech talking about that he has integrity of the heart. He is claiming that he is innocent. Other times that integrity of the heart was used, 1 Kings 9, it says, and if thou wilt walk before me as David thy father walked in integrity of heart and in uprightness, to do according to all that I've commanded thee, and will keep my statutes and my judgments. So the heart is, you can have good heart and bad heart. Integrity of the heart. Psalms 101, starting on 1. I will sing mercy. I will sing of mercy and justice to you, Adonai. I will sing praises. I will carefully attend to the blameless way. When will you come to me? I will walk within my house in the integrity of my heart. So both examples, it shows of walking in the statutes, the judgments, integrity, blameless, mercy, justice. Was Abimelech innocent? He's claiming to be. Number 7. Done with the word studies here. Number 7 says, "And now let the wife of the man return, for he is a prophet. He will pray for thee, and thou shalt live. If thou wilt not let her return, knowing that dying thou shalt die, thou and all who are thine." KJV Targum. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so in the drama of this broader story of Genesis 20, we risk missing something quite significant. Abraham is named a prophet. So in Genesis 27, he is named a prophet. This is the first time someone is mentioned as a prophet in the Bible. Some would say Enoch was a prophet, but this is literally the first time someone's mentioned as a prophet, and that's Father Abraham. Okay, so the mission of a prophet, this is their interpretation. The voice of God to his covenant people. Covenant's people direct representative to the Father. I don't know about divine prosecuting attorney, but that's more Satan. But God's divine prosecuting attorney against rebellious people and God's mediator to repentant people. I'll definitely agree with that last one. So some examples of prophets. Elijah, Elisha, Obadiah, Jonah, Amos, Hosea, Isaiah, and Micah. But scripture mentions women as prophets. Women. So 6 true and 1 false. 7 prophetesses, 6 true and 1 false. Miriam, sister of Moses. Huldah, Isaiah's wife. These are the verses. Deborah, judge and prophetess of Israel. Noadiah, Hannah, and Luke, and Jezebel, the false prophetess. And we'll see in the Targum, next chapter, if we get to it, that Sarah, at least the Targum mentions that Sarah was a prophetess. That's how they get their 7. Of course, they would probably throw away the New Testament, but in the canonical, there's 7 prophetesses, 7 women prophets, 6 true and 1 false. Anything to add there, guys, later when we open it up. Okay, number 11, word study. Abraham said, "Because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake." And they will slay me. That's the word. So 1 Kings 12:27. "If this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn against the Lord, even unto Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they shall kill me, and they will slay me, and go again to Rehoboam, the king of Judah." So again, Abraham is claiming that the fear of God is not in this place and not in Abimelech's place. And then in 1 Kings, it's saying the same thing, just based on that word study. Okay, so now, no, I'm pretty quick here. This is my last one. So it is my longest, but this is my last one. So there was only like 15 minutes because this was a shorter chapter. And I will steal a little thunder, but not much. Number 17. So the Palestinian argument says, "And Abraham prayed before the Lord, and the Lord healed Abimelech and his wife and his concubines, and they were set at large." Okay, some more commentary. So they derive this verse in Genesis 1:1-2. We'll talk about that in a little bit. "And Yahuwah visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which Yah had spoken to him." So basically what they're saying, that the lesson that if one has a need but prays for another with the same need, then Yah will answer first the need of the one who prayed. Think about that. So if you are praying for something for somebody else, you need that need too. You're showing so much unselfishness. And what they're saying is, and they're going to quote, that Abraham prayed in this the 20 verse 17, and then literally the first couple of verses in the next chapter, he gets the gift of the son. Amazing. So let's talk about prayer, guys. Up where we're at, there's a lot of text chains going on of prayers and stuff. And when we get a prayer, do we really pray for that person? Do we just have it in our thought, or do we really take the time? I know me personally, I have to do it right there, or I'm not going to do it. I'll forget. So I try to force myself, not force, but try to get away from what I'm doing and really pray for that person right away. I will forget. What do you guys do? You, my wife and I used to have a tradition where we would pray every Friday night only for other people. We're off and on that, but do you guys have any prayer traditions? How do you guys pray for other people? And have you been blessed for praying for other people? All right, finally, actually no, a little bit more. So some examples of this. So I gave my example, what the commentary said. So Numbers 21:7. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, "We have sinned. We have spoken against the Lord and against thee. Pray unto the Lord that he take away the serpents from us." And Moses prayed for the people. Again, Moses praying for the people. The people came to Moses after. Job 42:10. And Yahuwah turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. So again, Job's praying for his friends. The Father blessed him twice as much. Wow, amazing. A lot of us have this testimony, but the Sabbath is the true prosperity gospel, guys. And I'm not talking financially. It's such a blessing. Pray for others to obtain the Sabbath, to start doing it. Amazing. Finally, and this is where I'm going to steal a little bit of El's thunder. I don't have much Joshua today, but I just wanted to read some verses. Joshua 15, number 7, it says, "And yet with all these orders, Abram did not put confidence in him. He took Sarah and placed her in a chest and concealed it amongst their vessels. Abraham was greatly concerned about Sarah on account of the wickedness of the Egyptian. So he placed her in a chest." I just want to do the cross reference of Jacob does the same thing with Dinah, places her in a chest. We'll get to that eventually. What do you guys make about that? And then 17, 18, and 19 of the same chapter. And Sarah also prayed at that time and said, "O Yahuwah, thou didst tell my lord Abram to go from his land and from his father's house to the land of Canaan, and thou didst promise to do well with him if he would perform thy commands. Now behold, we have done that which thou didst command us. And we left our land and our families, and we went to a strange land and to a people whom we have not known before. We came to this land to avoid the famine, and this evil accident has befallen me. Now therefore, O Lord, O God, deliver us, save us from the hand of this oppressor, and do well with me for the sake of thy mercy." And finally, number 19, Yahuwah hearkened to the voice of Sarah, and the Lord sent an angel to deliver Sarah from the power of Pharaoh. I just want to show that Sarah was praying through all of this and apologized. She repented. I'm not sure the canon mentions that. Sarah was praying, and she apologized. She repented. That's what I got for 20. I'm going to catch up on the messages and off the know.
All right, thank you, Michael. And I dropped in a document here, I don't know, 10 minutes ago or so. It is pinned if anybody wants to pull it up and follow along. And what I'm going to be doing, just like last week or 2 weeks ago, last time we went through this, is to just compare with other books of the Bible. Now, this document got really lengthy, like 28 pages, so I don't think I'm going to be covering all of it, but let's start with chapter 20. I put a table of contents up there on the top, and we see, I'm going to be going through the book of Jasher, the writings of Abraham, Jubilees, as well as the legends of the Jews, if there's enough time, and see what they all say. Let's start with Jasher chapter 20. And it's funny because we're in Genesis 20, and Jasher 20 follows the same narrative. How crazy is that? And at that time, Abraham journeyed from the plain of Mamre, and he went to the land of the Philistines. And he dwelt in Gerar. It was in the 25th year of Abraham's being in the land of Canaan, and the 100th year of the life of Abraham, that he came to Gerar in the land of the Philistines. And when they entered the land, he said to Sarah his wife, "Say thou art my sister to any one that shall ask thee, in order that we may escape the evil of the inhabitants of the land." Now, notice here, he talks about, he's not necessarily talking directly about Abimelech. He seems to be talking about a multitude of evil people in the land. It could have been anybody, or it could have been other kings as well. And as Abraham, like, think about like Sodom and Gomorrah, and there was actually 5 cities of the plain there, and they were all very close, within walking distance. I mean, you could walk there to this day, maybe not in the heat of the salty sand, but they all had kings, right? So there was just a lot in close proximity. And as Abraham was dwelling in the land of the Philistines, the servants of Abimelech, king of the Philistines, saw that Sarah was exceedingly beautiful. Same story as Egypt. It was the servants who came and saw her first. And they asked Abraham concerning her, and he said, "She is my sister." And poor Sarah, always getting drug off to be some sex slave to these kings. And the servants of Abimelech went to Abimelech, saying, "A man from the land of Canaan is come to dwell in the land, and he has a sister that is exceeding fair." And Abimelech heard the words of his servants, who praised Sarah to him. And Abimelech sent his officers, and they brought Sarah to the king. And Sarah came to the house of Abimelech, and the king saw that Sarah was beautiful, and she pleased him exceedingly. And he approached her and said to her, "What is that man to thee with whom thou didst come to our land?" It's interesting. He's checking it out. He's saying if Sarah is available. And Sarah answered and said, "He is my brother, and we came from the land of Canaan to dwell wherever we could find a place." And Abimelech said to Sarah, "Behold, my land is before thee. Place thy brother in any part of this land that pleases thee, and it will be our duty to exalt and elevate him above all the people of the land, since he is thy brother." Man, Abraham was just making off with the goods in both accounts. And Abimelech sent for Abraham, and Abraham came to Abimelech. And Abimelech said to Abraham, "Behold, I have given orders that thou shalt be honored as thou desirest on account of thy sister Sarah." And Abraham went forth from the king, and the king's present followed him. As at evening time, before men lie down to rest, the king was sitting upon his throne, and a deep sleep fell upon him. So this is kind of a nice little added touch here, where it's given the idea that he's falling asleep on his throne, and he lay upon the throne and slept till morning. Interesting. Nobody came and disturbed him or anything like that. And he dreamed that an angel of Yahuwah came to him with a drawn sword in his hand, and the angel stood over Abimelech and wished to slay him with the sword. And the king was terrified in his dream, and said to the angel, "And what have I sinned against thee, that thou comest to slay me with the sword?" Now, quick pause here. If you read the Gospel of Bartholomew, and when Yahusha is being crucified, it is Bartholomew, who is the same as Nathaniel. He sees the angels coming down, and they are pissed. They got their swords out. They want to kill people, because they're like, "You're killing the son of Elohim right here. We're going to take this place out." And one of them, actually, he sees one of the angels come, and he cuts the curtain in the temple. He rips it open with his sword. And so it's the same thing here. Like, the angels are like, "Hey, this is Sarah. You don't mess with her. I don't care what Abraham said. You touch her, I'm killing you." I mean, you talk about a guardian angel. Sarah had some amazing guardian angels at her disposal. Didn't even know about it. And the angel answered and said to Abimelech, "Behold, thou diest on account of the woman which thou didst yesterday bring to thy house, for she is a married woman, the wife of Abraham, who came to thy house. Now therefore return that man his wife, for she is his wife. And shouldst thou not return her, know that thou wilt surely die, thou and all belonging to thee." And on that night there was a great outcry in the land of the Philistines. So again, just like the Egypt episode, remember what happened in Egypt was, my conclusion was that it was erectile dysfunction. But we see a similar outcry happening here in the land of the Philistines. And the inhabitants of the land saw the figure of a man standing with a drawn sword in his hand, and he smote the inhabitants of the land with the sword, yea, he continued to smite them. So, according to Jasher here, I'm a little confused on if this is literally happening, or if they're all having a dream, a vision of this happening, that the angel is making himself known in the vision. And Michael went over that commentary that, the Goyim, the Gentiles, can't ever really see Yahuwah. Now, this isn't necessarily Yahuwah. It's an angel of Yahuwah. So I don't know if they're actually seeing the angel or just a vision. That's kind of something to think about. And the angel of Yahuwah smote the whole land of the Philistines on that night. Now, there it is right there. Again, it seems like he's physically doing it, and it's not just a vision. And there was a great confusion on that night and on the following morning. And every womb was closed, and all their issues, and the hand of Yahuwah was open them on account of Sarah, wife of Abraham, whom Abimelech had taken. And in the morning, Abimelech rose with terror and confusion and with a great dread, and he sent and had his servants called in, and he related his dream to them, and the people were greatly afraid. Now, I'm going to quickly pause. It seems to me like there should be a moral outrage at Abraham for lying apparently, lying that this was his sister, right? Well, because it's like, well, what if all these people died because he was lying? Well, what if he had truly said that she was his wife? What if they would have tried to kill him? Now, again, there were angels here to save him, and that can all be debated. But I don't think that if the angel is really killing people here, I don't think it's without cause. I don't think it's just because of their ignorance. I think, just like Sodom and Gomorrah, that there was some really wicked people here. So, okay, what was I? I think 18. And in the morning, Abimelech arose with terror and confusion with great dread, and he sent and had his servants called in, and he related his dream to them. So again, it seems like it's a dream, right? And the people were greatly afraid. So if it wasn't just a dream, then why were the people afraid of his dream? They should have been afraid of the angel going around and killing everybody. And one man standing amongst the servants of the king answered the king, saying, O sovereign king, restore this woman to her husband, for he is her husband. For the like happened to the king of Egypt when this man came to Egypt. So they know Abraham is like a serial repeater of like saying that Sarah's his sister, and that they're going around and everyone's trying to kidnap her. The same thing happened in Egypt. Like they've heard of the reputation. And he said concerning his wife, she is my sister, for such is his manner of doing when he cometh to dwell in the land in which he is a stranger. Now that's like Abraham has that reputation now. And Pharaoh sent and took this woman for a wife, and Yahuwah brought upon him grievous plagues until he returned the woman to her husband. Now, therefore, O sovereign king, know what happened yesternight to the whole land, for there was a very great consternation and great pain and lamentation, and we know that it was on account of the woman which thou didst take. So, well, we'll get to this later. Now, therefore, restore this woman to her husband, lest it should befall us as it did to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and his subjects, and that we may not die. And Abimelech hastened and called and had Sarah called for her, and she came before him, and he had Abraham called for her, and he came before him. And Abimelech said to them, what is this work you have been doing and saying you are brother and sister? And I took this woman for a wife. And Abraham said, because I thought I should suffer death on account of my wife. And Abimelech took flocks and herds and men servants and maid servants and 1,000 pieces of silver, and he gave them to Abraham, and he returned Sarah to him. And Abimelech said to Abraham, behold, the whole land is before thee, dwell in it wherever thou shalt choose. And Abraham and Sarah his wife went forth from the king's presence with honor and respect, and they dwelt in the land, even in Gerar. And all the inhabitants of the land of the Philistines and the king's servants were still in pain, though the plague which the angel had inflicted upon them the whole night on account of Sarah. So it's just interesting. Like I feel like there was like a reality, something physically happened, but it seemed to happen like the plague was connected with the vision. Maybe you guys are reading this differently. Let me know how you guys are reading this. And Abimelech sent for Abraham, saying, pray now for thy servants to Yahuwah, thy Elohim, that he may put away this mortality from amongst us. And there's the death word right there. And Abraham prayed on account of Abimelech and his subjects, and Yahuwah heard the prayer of Abraham, and he healed Abimelech and all his subjects. So everyone was healed. All right, the next section I want to read is the same passage from the writings of Abraham. Now, this is really interesting because this book is clearly using Jasher and others for its source, or, I guess you could argue Abraham wrote this himself. I don't know. And I've pointed out there are many connections here to the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, it's a fascinating read, but the writings of Abraham really strays in some areas, and they boldly do it. Whoever is the scribe, wherever the origin of this book is, it's a mysterious origin. It strays in some area, and you're going to see that for yourself here. So let's get to it. This comes from chapter 125. After the destruction of the city of the plains, that would be Sodom and Gomorrah, I, Abraham, journeyed to the south to the land of Gerar. Now the king of the land of Gerar was Abimelech, and he was one who worshipped the Most High Elohim, and he was just and upright in all his ways. Okay, so here we have Abimelech now. Before this account, he is just, upright, and he worships the Most High Elohim. A little bit different take there, isn't it? And Abimelech had entered the holy order of Elohim. What's the holy order? That's the order of Melchizedek. And was a priest and king after the order of the Most High Elohim. So he's a priest, and had received the rights and ordinances of the gospel, the good news of Yahushua HaMashiach. As a youth, he had dwelt with me. This is even taking it further now. So now they're old college buddies. They're old dorm mates. As a youth, he had dwelt with me in the city of Shalom, and he was as a brother unto me, and we shared all things. And you recall now, it's to be in the order of Melchizedek, you share all things. You don't have like private, ownership really. Everything you have is for the good of the. This isn't like communistic. This is for the good of the any other member of the priesthood of Melchizedek. They all, share things together. When Sarah and I went in unto Abimelech to commune with him, the spirit of Yahuwah fell upon Abimelech, and he blessed Sarah in great outpourings after the order of the ancients, and anointed her that she might bear holy seed. And we rejoice in the blessings of Yahuwah unto Sarah through the 3 holy men from the city of Enoch, and through his servant Abimelech. Again, this seems like it completely veers off course from Genesis, the Aramaic Targum, and Jasher. Just a completely different feel to it. I don't know what to make of that. And they boldly do it. And the spirit of Yahuwah fell upon me also, and I blessed her and anointed her that the spirit of Yahuwah might fall upon her in greater outpouring to the sanctification of herself and her seed. It seems to me, let me just finish the chapter. And we rejoiced together for 3 nights and 2 days, and worship Yahuwah our Elohim, and were filled with joy and peace in the blessings of Yahuwah unto us, and we were magnified in Yahuwah. It seems to me that it skips right over the entire episode, and it's just because, remember now, the servants come and tell Abimelech about this woman Sarah, how beautiful she is. I don't know if he knows who Abraham, that this is Abraham's woman. When Abraham and Abimelech were school buddies at the school of Shem and Shalom or Yerushalayim, he obviously wasn't married to Sarah at that point. Sarah comes in, she's beautiful. The servants tell him about it. He brings her in, and it seems like at this point, it's the reunion of Abraham and Abimelech after the events. Like it seems like it glosses right over it. Okay, so if I'm reading it wrong, let me know. Continuing with 126. I hope you guys enjoy these different texts as much as I do. The differences and the commonalities and the insight. The next night, after Sarah and I had returned to our camp, Abimelech was seated upon his throne praying, when a sleep from Yahuwah fell upon him, and he slept there all that night. And while he slept, he dreamed a dream in which an angel of Yahuwah with a drawn sword in his hand came and stood above him. Now we're seeing a slightly reversed order, right? Now, Sarah had already had left his camp by this point. So it's like, what the? And Abimelech was frightened at the angel, but the angel said unto him, fear not, for because thou hast faithfully entered into the rites and ordinances of my gospel, and hast walked a holy walk before me, and didst uphold Shem and Abraham after him in the work which I have called them to do in maintaining mine holy order in the earth. Behold, I am sent to stand by thy side, and shall protect thee against all the power of the adversary. And who is the adversary? That I guess that's a reference to one of the Satans. For thy sins are forgiven thee, and thine exaltation is sure, and thou shalt dwell forever in the presence of thy Elohim. So saying, the angel departed from the vision of Abimelech, but he felt his presence near him from the time forth, and the adversary thereafter exercised no power over him. So I find that fascinating. Total divergence. You guys can make sense of that what you will, but let's keep reading on Jubilee 16. There are only 2 verses. I was trying to find all of the references to Genesis chapter 20, and I saw 2 verses in Jubilees, and here they are. And in this month, Abraham moved from Hebron and departed. In this month, that's when Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. Abraham moved from Hebron and departed and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur in the mountains of Gerar. And in the middle of the 5th month, he moved from thence and dwelt in the well of the oath. That's it. They skipped the whole episode. All right. So before to close off this section of the reading, I'm going to read from the Legends of the Jews. And just as a reminder, the writer of the Legends of the Jews, he has taken multiple sources of multiple books and kind of compiling them into one read. It makes it really interesting, and you'll recognize a lot of stuff in here. And it says that this section is called "Among the Philistines." The destruction of Sodom induced Abraham to journey to Gerar. Okay, still tracking. Accustomed to extend hospitality to travelers and wayfarers, he no longer felt comfortable in a district in a district in which all traffic had ceased by reason of the ruined cities. All right, so he just basically, it's like the way I see Abraham is that he's on the road to Sodom and Gomorrah, and he's trying to warn people. He's trying to preach the gospel to them. He's a prophet, and it's like, well, the cities are destroyed, so I think I'm just going to move on. Right? He's going to go to the next city and talk about getting a reputation. If he goes somewhere else and those cities are destroyed too, I don't think anybody would want him after that point. But there was another reason for Abraham's leaving his place. The people spoke too much about the ugly incident with Lot's daughters. Arrived in the I could see that scandal, and that's a reference to, of course, his daughter sleeping with him and having sons. So Lot's children were also his grandchildren. Arrived in the land of the Philistines, he again, as aforetime in Egypt, came to an understanding with Sarah that she was to call herself his sister. When the report of her beauty reached the king, he ordered her to be brought before him, and he asked her who her companion was, and she told him that Abraham was her brother. Entranced by her beauty, Abimelech the king took Sarah to wife and heaped marks of honor upon Abraham in accordance with the just claims of a brother of the queen. Towards evening, before retiring, while he was still seated upon his throne, Abimelech fell into a sleep, and he slept until the morning. And in the dream he dreamed, he saw that an angel of Yahuwah raising his sword to deal him a death blow. Sore frightened, he asked the cause, and the angel replied and said, "Thou wilt die on account of the woman thou didst take into the house this day, for she is the wife of Abraham, the man whom thou didst cite before thee. Return his wife unto him. But if thou restore her not, thou shalt surely die, thou and all that are thine." In that night the voice of a great crying was heard in the whole land of the Philistines, for they saw the figure of a man walking about with sword in his hand, slaying all that came in his way. Again, I don't know if they're seeing this in a vision or if it's really happening. At the same time, it happened that in men and beasts alike, all the apertures of the body closed up, and the land was seized with indescribable excitement. In the morning, when the king awoke in agony and terror, he called all his servants and told his dream in their ears. One of their number said, "O Lord and King, restore this woman unto the man, for he is her husband. It is but his way in a strange land to pretend that she is his sister." Thus did he with the king of Egypt too, and Elohim sent heavy affliction upon Pharaoh when he took the woman into himself. It seems like this is reading a lot like Jasher. "Consider also, O Lord and King, what hath befallen this night in the land. Great pain, wailing, confusion there was, and we know that it came upon us only because of this woman." Okay, I guess I have a few more paragraphs here. "There was some among his servant who spake, Be not afraid of dreams. What dreams make known to man is but falsehood." Then Elohim, thereby cementing the idea that people really were having this vision across the land. "Then Elohim appeared unto Abimelech again and commanded him to let Sarah go free, otherwise he would be a dead man. Abimelech replied," and that lines up there, interesting enough, with what we read elsewhere. Abimelech replied, "Is this thy way? Then I ween that the generations of the flood and the generations of the confusion of tongues were innocent too. The man himself did say unto me, She is my sister, and she herself said, He is my brother. And all the people of their household said the same words. And Elohim said unto him, Yea, I know that thou hast not yet committed a trespass, for I withheld thee from sinning. Thou didst not know that Sarah was a man's wife. But is it becoming to question a stranger? No sooner does he set foot upon thy territory about the woman accompanying him, whether she be his wife or his sister. Abraham, who is a prophet, knew beforehand the danger to himself if he revealed the whole truth. But being a prophet, he also knows that thou didst not touch his wife, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live." The smoke was still rising from the ruins of Sodom, and Abimelech and his people, seeing it, feared that a like fate might overtake them. That is so interesting there. I love that mental image that from where they were at, they could see the smoke rising. There's the black inferno rising. The king called Abraham and reproached him for having caused such great misinformation through his false statements concerning Sarah. Abraham excused his conduct by his apprehension that the fear of Elohim not being in the place, the inhabitants of the land slay him for his wife. Abraham went and told the history of his whole life, and he said, "When I dwelt in the house of my father, the nations of the world sought to do me harm, but Elohim proved himself my redeemer. When the nations of the world tried to lead me astray to idolatry, Elohim revealed himself to me, and he said, 'Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house.' And when the nations of the world were about to go astray, Elohim sent two prophets, my kinsmen Shem and Eber, to admonish them." So this, of course, I know this is Legends of the Jews, but it's interesting that it's referring to Shem and Eber as prophets. And I don't know where he's sourcing that from. Abimelech gave rich gifts to Abraham, wherein he acted otherwise than Pharaoh in similar circumstances. The Egyptian king gave gifts to Sarah, but Abimelech was Elohim-fearing and desired that Abraham pray for him. So that gives some credence there to that Abimelech seemed to have a history with Yahuwah, at least in this account. To Sarah, he gave a costly robe that covered her whole person, hiding her seductive charms from the view of beholders. Okay. I don't know. Was she not covered in a whole costly robe that covered her whole person beforehand? I don't know. See, he's trying to make sure this doesn't happen again. At the same time, it was a reproach to Abraham that he had not fitted Sarah out with the splinter due to his wife. Ouch. Again, I don't know where he's sourcing that, but it's interesting information nonetheless. Though Abimelech had done him great injury, Abraham not only granted him the forgiveness he craved, but also he prayed for him to Elohim. Thus, he is an exemplar unto all. Man should be pliant as a reed, not hard like the cedar. He should be easily appeased and slow to anger, and as soon as he who has sinned against him ask for pardon, he should forgive him with all his heart. Even if deep and serious injury has been done to him, he should not be vengeful, nor bear his brother a grudge in his heart. Abraham prayed thus for Abimelech: O Adon of the world, thou hast created man that he may increase and propagate his kind. Grant that Abimelech and his house may multiply and increase. Elohim fulfilled Abraham's petition in behalf of Abimelech and his people, and it was the first time it happened in the history of mankind that Elohim fulfilled the prayer of one human being for the benefit of another. I don't know where he's getting that from, but it's interesting note nonetheless. Whenever I read from Legends of the Jews, I'm sure you all have your salt shakers with you, salting, your table, your computer screen right now. Abimelech and his subjects were healed of all their diseases, and so Ephesius was the prayer offered by Abraham that the wife of Abimelech, barren hitherto, bore a child. That's an interesting little footnote there. All right, that is it for chapter 20, all the texts I wanted to go through. I hope you guys enjoyed those comparisons. And I'm going to hand it back over to Michael. Oh, no. I'm going to read.
I can read it.
Michael, what? Yeah, why don't you read it and then just go straight into the notes?
Are you sure? You don't want to go first?
No, I want you to go first.
Okay. All right. All right. Let me get that. Chapter 21, Genesis Targum. All right. And the Lord remembered Sarah according to that which he had said to her. And the Lord wrought a miracle for Sarah, like to that, which Abraham had spoken in prayer for Abimelech. And she conceived, and Sarah bare to Abraham a son, who was like to himself in his age, at the time of which the Lord had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son, whom Sarah had borne, Ishak. And Abraham circumcised Ishak, his son, when his son was 8 days, his son of 8 days, and the Lord had commanded him. And Abraham was the son of 100 years when Ishak, his son, was born to him. And Sarah said, The Lord hath done wondrously for me. All who hear will wonder at me. And she said, How faithful was the messenger who announced to Abraham, and said, Sarah will nurse children, for she shall bring forth a son in her old age. And the child grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast on the day when Ishak was weaned. And Sarah observed the son of Hagar, the Mitzrayita, whom she bare to Abraham, mocking with a strange worship, and bowing to the Lord. She said to Abraham, Cast out this handmaid and her son, for it is not possible for the son of this handmaid to inherit with my son, and he to make war with Ishak. And the thing was very evil in Abraham's eyes, on account of Ishmael his son, who had practiced a strange worship. And the Lord said to Abraham, Let it not be evil in thine eyes on account of the youth, who goeth forth from thy nurturing, and of thy handmaid, whom thou sendest away. Hearken unto all that Sarah saith to thee, because she is a prophetess. For in Ishak shall sons be called unto thee, and this son of the handmaid shall be the genealogized after thee. But the son of the handmaid have I set for a predatory people, because he is thy son. And Abraham rose up in the morning, and took bread and a cruse of water, and gave to Hagar to bear upon her shoulder, and bound it to her loins, to signify that she was a servant and the child, and dismissed her with a letter of divorce. And she went and wandered from the way into the desert, which was hard by Beersheba. And it was when they came to the entrance of the desert, they remembered to wander after strange worship. And Ishmael was seized with a burning thirst, and drank of the water till all the water was consumed from the cruse. And he was dried up and withered in his flesh. And she carried him and was exhausted. And she cried unto the fear of his father. He answered her not, and she laid the youth down at once under one of the trees. And she went and sat on one side, and cast away the idol over the strange worship, and removed from her son as the distance of an arrow from the bow. For she said, I am not able to see the death of the child. And she sat over against her son, and lifted up her voice, and wept. And the voice of the youth was heard before the Lord for the righteousness sake of Abraham. And the angel of the Lord called to Hagar from heaven, and said, What to thee, Hagar? Faint not, for the voice of the youth is heard before the Lord. Neither shall judgment be according to the evil which he will do, but according to the righteousness of Abraham his mercy upon him in the place where he is. Arise, support the child, and strengthen thine hand in him, for I have set him for a great people. And the Lord opened her eyes, and showed her a well of water, and she went and filled the cruse with water, and gave the youth to drink. And the word of the Lord was the helper of the youth, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness, and became a skillful master of the bow. He dwelt in the wilderness of Pharaon, and took for a wife Adisha, but put her away. And his mother took for him Fatima to wife, from the land of Mitzrayim. And it was at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, chief of his hosts, spake to Abraham, saying, The word of the Lord is in thine aid, in all whatsoever thou doest. And now swear to me here by the word of the Lord, that thou wilt not be false with me, nor with my son, nor with the son of my son, according to the kindness which I have done with thee. Thou shalt do with me, and with the land in which thou dwellest. And Abraham said to him, I swear. And Abraham remonstrated with Abimelech concerning the well of water, of which the servants of Abimelech had deprived him. And Abimelech said, I knew not who did this thing, neither hast thou shown it to me, nor have I heard it from others, till the day from thyself. And Abraham took sheep and oxen, and gave to Abimelech, and they made both a covenant. And Abraham set 7 lambs apart, and separated them from the oxen. And Abimelech said to Abraham, What are these 7 lambs which thou hast set apart? And he said, That thou mayest take the 7 lambs from my hand, to be a testimony for me that I have digged this well. Therefore he called the well of the 7 lambs, because there they too did swear. And they struck a covenant at the well of the 7 lambs. And Abimelech and Phicol, the chief of his host, arose and returned to the land of the Philistine. And he planted a garden, or paradise, at the well of the 7 lambs, and prepared in the midst of it food and drink for them who passed by and who returned. And he preached to them, Confess ye and believe in the name of the word of the Lord, the everlasting God. And that's it for Genesis 21, Targum. Okay, so usually I'm handing it off, but we will start. Where did I start? Okay, so sorry guys, I was scrolling. Okay, number 1 this time. KGV says, And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. Palestinian different. The Lord remembered Sarah according to which he had said to her. And the Lord wrought a miracle for Sarah, like to that for which Abraham had spoken in prayer. It's a little bit different for Abimelech. Okay, so some commentary linked Hannah's visitation with Rosh Hashanah, Yom Teruah, through the Bible's parallel uses of the word remembering. So in 1 Samuel 1, 19 and 20, it says that Yah remembered Hannah and she conceived. And I'm going to link it here. Leviticus 23:24 describes Yom Teruah as a remembering of the blast of the trumpet. And then Sarah uses the word visiting. So 1 Samuel 2 says the Lord had visited Hannah, and here you go in Genesis 21:1 that the Lord visited Sarah. What do you make about that? Is there any way, I haven't done any kind of charting or anything, but is this Rosh Hashanah? Just based on the remembering part and the visiting part. I don't know, I thought that was cool, cross-reference there. I'm going to skip to 7, so there's a big gap. I have way more on this chapter than I did on 20. but I'm going to skip to 7. So 7 says, the KJV, it says, "And she said, Who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck? I have borne him in a son in his old age." I used to do these all the time. Now I do more word studies, but cross-reference. These are strictly cross-reference. I'm going to cross-reference faith of Abraham and Sarah. So Hebrews 11:11. Through faith, also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. This is more of a Sarah. Sarah is given, having a birth, conceived seed. She had faith, judged him who was faithful. Psalms 113 says, now this was awesome. Who is like the Lord our God? Who is enthroned on high? Who looks far down to the heavens and the earth? Who raises the poor from the dust? He lifts the needy from the garbage heap, to seat them with noblemen of his people. Here it is. He has the infertile woman live in the house as a joyful mother of children. Praise of the Lord. So Psalms 113:9 is the infertile woman live in the house as a joyful mother of children. Yeah. Let me add this. Okay, so this says there are 6 barren women in the Bible. 3 of the 4 are matriarchs. So Sarah, Rebecca, and Rachel in Genesis. Hannah, mother of the prophet Samuel, I mentioned that earlier. And the anonymous woman of Manoah, wife of Manoah, mother of Samson in Judges 13, and the great woman of Shanum in Elisha. So there's 6 barren women in the Old Testament. But when you get to the New Testament, there's a 7th. There's always a 7, right? 7th of 7 biblically childless women is Elizabeth, wife of Zacharias, who was barren, but in her old age conceived John the prophet, or John the Baptist. Sorry, Yeshua called. Okay, so 7, and look what the 7th. There's always a set apart. Look at the 7th was the one who proclaimed the way to the Messiah, based on a barren woman. Amazing. Oh yeah, I guess I could tell this story. So I have a buddy who is not totally into Torah, but we've been talking about it. This was 2 or 3 years ago by now. But he started doing Sabbath. I would, he wouldn't do the Torah portions, but X might have. He did the Torah portions, but I would connect it. Each week out we would talk and be like, hey, the New Testament said this about the Torah portion this one, and there's one where it's talking about childless women. And I remember talking about Samson and his mother, and then the New Testament passage was this verse, and I forgot what the Torah part was, but I shared it with him, and it had something to do with the woman stopped drinking wine. And he told his wife, they've been trying to have a son, a promised son, for the gap between their children. Like, she's like, the daughter's like a freshman in high school now, and the son is like 2.5. But they've been trying for a while. He had his wife stop drinking wine, like the Bible says, to have this. And they were pregnant within 2 months. And it was amazing. And it was an amazing testimony just based on this. So yeah, praise God. Number 8. And the child grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. So some context, weaning would have taken place about 2 or 3 years old, which means Ishmael would have been 16 or 17 by this time. And I want you to remember 16 or 17 because I'm going to talk way more about how he's perceived later in this chapter. So today we are told that when a baby is weaned, he is no longer nursing, but eating solid foods at around 6 months old. The Hebrew word for weaned actually means to become a person. Therefore, many biblical families held a weaning ceremony when a male child was old enough to show his personhood. That is, his character was evident as he began to make his own decisions. So yeah, I don't know what to make about that. What do you guys think of weaning? Okay, so number 9 says, and Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had born unto Abraham, mocking. Okay, so word study. Genesis 26, and it came to pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, same story. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Remember, I told you there's 2 Abimelechs and 3 sister wives. King of the Philistines looked out a window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting or caressing with Rebekah, his wife. That word mocking means sporting or caressing. It's the same word. So, I as Ishmael, and the Targum, goes with it too. It talks about mocking strange worship, but then that same word, the same Hebrew word, is used in a good way, caressing. How do you get that, guys? How do you get mocking strange worship, sporting, caressing? I don't know. I don't know. Is there an agenda at play? I don't know. But mocking is so much more. Maybe Pam can come in with some commentary there. But I just thought that it blew me away when the same word, and it's not used many times. If this might be the only time, but when Ishmael was mocking, and then Isaac was doing the same thing in the same scenario, Abimelech the king, sporting and caressing his wife. I don't know. Palestinian. And Sarah observed the son of Hagar, the Mitzrite, whom she bare to Abraham, mocking with a strange worship and bowing to the Lord. Again, that's just what the Targum says. Okay, so here's some commentary and maybe earmuff time for the children. The literal translation of Genesis 21:9 is that a 16-year-old Ishmael was laughing with the 2 to 3-year-old Isaac on the special day in which Isaac was being honored by his father and the whole community. Some Bible scholars interpret the laughter as mocking or malevolent. That Ishmael, like his mother, who disdained Sarah, Genesis 16:5, was ridiculing his brother. So that's one version. Here's the other one. Other scholars have suggested something more sinister. In ancient Near Eastern literature, a laughter can be a euphemism for foreplay. They suggest that Ishmael was attempting to molest his brother, demeaning him to the community in an attempt to secure Isaac's place as the favored son. It says Absalom took physical possession of his father's concubines in order to usurp his father's leadership in 2 Samuel. I don't know. I don't really believe that, but that's what, some other examples of this mocking or caressing or laughing or something more sinister. Okay. Number 10. So it says, wherefore she said unto Abram, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be the heir with my son, even with Isaac. I remember we talked about it. I don't have it written here, but I remember there was conflicting stories between Jubilees and Jasher on why she cast her out. Jealousy on her part in Jubilees, I remember, and then in Jasher, I think Ishmael was trying to kill. But either way, she wanted him cast out. So some cross-reference or some same word studies on the word cast out. Exodus 11, and Yahuwah said unto Moses, yet will I bring one plague more upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go hence. When he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you out hence altogether, or cast you out. And then Proverbs 22:10, drive out the scoffer, or cast out the scoffer, and strife will leave. Was there strife? Even quarreling and dishonor will cease. So does this Proverbs relate that where's there strife going on in the family? And Abraham cast out the bondwoman, or actually Sarah told Abraham to cast out the bondwoman. Proverbs 22:10 says, cast out the scoffer. All right, number 11. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son, Palestinian. And the thing was very evil in Abraham's eyes on account of Ishmael his son, who had practiced a strange worship. And they're adding the strange worship part. Okay, so this is long. That was good. Of them. Follow along. Okay, so we are going to begin with what appears to be sharp words from Sarah concerning Ishmael. So as I read here, so the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the same day that Isaac was weaned. Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, scoffing. Therefore she said to Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son. The son of this bondwoman shall not be the heir with my son, namely with Isaac. So commentary, it will be helpful for us to do a little historical digging at this point. Of the several law codes surviving from the ancient Middle East, the most famous, after the Torah, of course, is the Code of Hammurabi of Babylon. The laws are written on black stone, 7.5 feet in height and 6 in circumference. The stone depicts the king receiving the laws from Shamash, the god of justice, and encodes many laws which had probably evolved over a long period of time. It's interesting to the general reader because of what it tells about the attitudes and daily lives of ancient Babylonians. This stone can be found today in Paris. Remember, Abraham and Sarah came from the area of Babylonia. The code seems to have some things in common with the customs that appear in the Torah. Many experts have concluded that the Hammurabi and Abraham might have been contemporaries. Okay, so it's going to show possible evidence on how this was handled. So here's the law. If the wife was barren and the husband was allowed to take a handmaid from his wife's court and bear a child for his house. The concubine was not held in equal status with the wife, but inferior to her. If the concubine became a rival, the wife could reduce her to slavery again, sell her, or dismiss her from the household. So how did Sarah relate to Hagar? Note that in verse 10, Sarah didn't even mention Hagar or Ishmael by name. She seems to be emphasizing that she still considers Hagar to be an Egyptian, as I read, right? So cast out this bondwoman, Miss Rita in the Targum. Okay. After many years, was Hagar still holding on to Egypt in her heart? Now remember, Sarah's original plan was to adopt Ishmael. Now I was reading this, I was like, that was interesting. So back in Genesis 16:2, so Sarah said to Abram, "See now, Yahuwah has restrained me from hearing children. Please go in my mind. Perhaps I shall obtain children by her." So she was planning to adopt Ishmael way back in 16:2 because she didn't, they had no plans for Isaac yet. So that kind of like, that was interesting. So before she was planning on adopting, and now she's casting out Hagar to send Ishmael away. She has her child. So apparently Hagar had never really allowed Ishmael to bond with Sarah, although there does appear to be a relationship between Abraham and Ishmael. Sarah's works in coming up with a son had not been successful. Yahuwah okayed Sarah's plan of setting Isaac apart, despite Abraham's concern. Verse 11, and the matter was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. But Elohim said to Abraham, "Do not let it be displeasing in your sight because of the lad or because of your bondwoman. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice. For in Isaac your seed shall be called." Elohim saying this to Abraham, so that the seed is through Isaac. Listen to what Sarah says. Okay. Only offspring through Isaac would be considered Abraham's true heirs. It appears at this point that Sarah has an understanding that Abraham does not yet see. So we're jumping ahead, and we'll get to that in a few weeks. Genesis 25:5, and Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac. But Abraham gave gifts to the son of the concubines, which Abraham had, and while he was still living, he sent them eastward, away from Isaac. So he still gives gifts to the heir of Hagar. Okay, so now we're done with those things. Continuing on the code of Hammurabi, if it's saying if it was forbidden for a chief wife to expel a slave and her child if the child was her husband's. So it was not within Sarah's power to expel Hagar and Ishmael. She knows that Abraham must be the one to give Hagar freedom and send her son away. So again, it's still the Torah, it still has similarities between this code and the Torah. And that's why Abraham is the one who had to send her away. And the angel of the Lord said, "Listen to Sarah." Okay, all right. Number 12. Palestinian says, "And the Lord said to Abraham, let it not be evil in thine eyes on account of the youth who goeth forth from thy nurturing, and of thy handmaid whom thou sendest away. Hearken unto Sarah, saith he, because she is a prophetess, for in Ishak shall sons be called unto thee, and this son of the handmaid shall not be genealogized after thee." So there to go again, she's a prophetess. Now, if Katie's still here, a chiastic structure for her. That's really awesome. So Yahweh's choice of Abraham's younger son Isaac in chapter 21 begins a chiastic pattern, the narrative that will be completed in Yahweh's choice of another younger son Jacob. We'll get to that. We haven't got to Jacob yet, but this kind of shows you. So first one. Now remember, the key is F. There was some confusion months ago. God's choice of Abraham's younger son. A marriage of rejected elder son Ishmael. He became an archer to a foreigner. There was a dispute over Abraham's wells and a covenant with Abimelech. Abraham's obedience to God's covenant. The genealogy of Nahor, non-chosen line. Okay, now the middle. The death of Sarah and the burial of Machpelah. We'll get to that in a few weeks. Now let's go down. Genealogy of Ishmael, non-chosen line. So E's or Nahor, non-chosen lines. Esau scorns God's covenant, his birthright. Abraham obeys God's covenant, Esau scorned it. There's a dispute over Abraham's wells and covenants with Abimelech. Same thing. Marriage of a rejected elder son Esau, who became an archer to foreigners. Same thing. And then God's choice of Jacob, Isaac's younger son. Praise Yah, all these chiastic patterns in the Bible. It's amazing. All right. Number 13. But the son of the handmaid have I set for a predatory people, because he is thy son. So this was saying, so it's similar. It's a different code around this time. Again, I'm only bringing this up because it's similar to the Torah, guys. Okay, so Abraham's action at Yah's prompting and protecting the inheritance rights of Sarah's son by giving Hagar her freedom and sending Hagar and Ishmael away may be reflected in another ancient Eastern codified law, the law code of Bith Ashtar. So there was a clause in this code that stipulated if a man granted freedom to a slave and her children by him, the children of the slave shall not divide the estate with the children of their former master. So again, there's no inheritance with that. He can give her stuff, but he can't split the inheritance part. And it also mentions that I wanted to point out on this verse, number 13. Well, it says it in the KJV. The KJV says, and also, son of the bondwoman, will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. So this is saying that Ishmael is Abraham's literal seed. It did not say that with Isaac. It just said Yahuwah visited Sarah and she conceived. Is this another miraculous birth? We've had some discussions about that. It doesn't go into detail. I wonder if Noel has something on that, but I just noticed that Ishmael is his seed. It says it right here. Why doesn't it say Isaac is? Maybe it does in another chapter, and I didn't do my deep research, but I just thought that was interesting. It literally says, hey, this is your seed, but it didn't say that's Isaac. Okay. Number 14. So Palestinian Abraham rose in the morning and took bread and a cruse of water and gave to Hagar to bear upon her shoulder and bound it to her loins to signify that she was a servant. The child and dismissed her with a letter of divorce. She went and wandered from the way into the desert, which was hard by Beersheba. So Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael away with a skin of water and bread. I was doing research, and a skin held approximately 3 gallons of water. So he sent her away with 3 gallons of water. We're going to get into it later where Targum claims that Ishmael drank all the water. So what do you make about that? Anything to add there? 3 gallons of water. So I thought this was interesting. If you noticed, Hagar put everything on her shoulder. Okay, so Exodus 12:33 says, the Egyptians urged the people to send them out of the land in a hurry. They said, we will all be dead. So the people took their dough before it was leavened with their kneading bowls bound up in the clothes on their shoulders. So I just thought it was interesting that did he give her bread too? Yeah, he gave her bread. So in KJV, oh yeah, I guess it says in Targum. He gave her bread upon the shoulder as they left. Same thing the Egyptians did to Israelites. What do you guys make about that? The shoulder part kind of, and the bread, the manna. I think Stephanie was saying that the yeast is in the air, and so they carried in the bread, and that's how, the manna worked there. But what do you guys think about that parallel? Okay, number 15, it says, and the water was spent in the bottle. Actually, no, that's KJV. Okay. I'll read Palestinian. And it was when they came to the entrance of the desert, they remembered to wander after strange worship. And Ishmael was seized with a burning thirst, and drank of the water till all the water was consumed from the cruse. He was dried up and withered in his flesh. She carried him and was exhausted. She cried unto the fear of his father, and he answered her not. And she laid the youth down at once under the tree. So, again, this is where Ishmael drank all the water, 3 gallons, and just chilled at the tree. What do you guys make about that? And then I want to, what I was talking about the age difference, where it said he was weaned 2 to 3 years. Ishmael must have been 16. So wasn't Ishmael 17 at this time? Why is he being carried? It's like, oh, it's this poor youth. It's this poor youth. Mom has to carry him under the tree. He was 17. Why? What is going on here? What? Is there an agenda? I don't know. I don't know. But it just struck me as they already told us his age. He's probably the one carrying it for his mother. Why does it say that she carried him? Was exhausted. I don't know. What do you guys make about that? He was 17. All right, number 16. I guess I'm not going to do the difference, but I just want to highlight in Palestinian again. And she went and sat on one side and cast away the idol or strange worship. It doesn't say that in the Masoretic. It does in the Targum. I wonder what Septuagint said. I should have looked, but I just want to point the difference there. Number 20. And the word of the Lord was the helper of the youth, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness, and he became a skillful master of the bow. KJV says, and he was with the lad, he dwelt in the wilderness. And I want to post this. Just haven't changed much. That's funny. Maybe you're right. That's funny. What became of Ishmael, and what details does the narrative include about him? So these three details: made his home in the desert of Paran. He became an archer, and he married a foreign woman. Okay. 22. It came to pass at the time that Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all thee that thou doest. So Phicol is interesting. It is significant that Abimelech's military commander, Phicol, accompanied him instead of his quarters. The presence of the king's military commander suggests that this was more than a social visit. Phicol is a Anatolian Hittite name. Like Abraham, he's an immigrant. There are other Hittites living in the region, especially near Hebron. Later, Abraham will purchase land in Hebron from the Hittite Ephraim. So yeah, what do you guys make about that? That this was his military commander coming with him. Was he afraid of Abraham? I don't know. Okay, 25. Abraham reproved Abimelech because of the well of the water, which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. So some commentary, I thought this was interesting too. That Abraham's reproval of Abimelech in Genesis 21:25 is an example of a tradition of admonishing or warn or reprimanding near death. So they stated that Deuteronomy 1:3-4 to indicate that Moses spoke to the Israelites in rebuke. He reprimanded them. Deuteronomy 1:3, in the 40th year, on the first day of the 11th month, Moses spoke to the sons of Israel in accordance with everything that the Lord had commanded him to declare to them. After he had defeated Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth. They taught that Moses rebuked them only when he approached death. They also taught that Moses learned this lesson from Jacob, who admonished his sons in Genesis 49, only when he neared death. So some other examples of admonishing people near death besides Moses and Abraham. Isaac reproved Abimelech, Ahuzath, and Phicol in Genesis 26. Joshua admonished the Israelites in Joshua 24. Samuel admonished the Israelites in 1 Samuel 12, and David admonished Solomon in 1 Kings. So there's a pattern here of warning or reprimanding people before death. It's like that was interesting about the patriarchs. So Jacob did that. That's interesting. He's warning before he's about to die. He knows he's about to die. Here's the last, and that's what they're saying here. What do I have left? Okay, so a little bit left. So 27. Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them unto Abimelech, and both of them made a covenant. So Abraham provides the animals for this covenant. Abimelech is the one to kill them and divide them into two. After that, both of them will pass between the pieces. The covenant will be confirmed. The significance of this ancient rite is that if either party broke the covenant, they would be treated in the same manner as the animals that they passed through. In other words, what has been done to these animals is what I'm binding myself to. Remember, we talked about this a few chapters ago, if you can remember, about the pieces in the covenant that Abraham did a while ago. That same thing happened in here. Number 30. For he said, for these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me, that I have digged this well. The giving of animals was the ancient equivalent of writing a contract. Think about that. That's currency, right? It was a visible sign an agreement had been reached. With no police, courts of law, or layers, people of Abraham's era used this to conclude agreements. especially for an issue like water rights in an arid land. This was before the priesthood was formed, and you would go to them for judging. This is in Abraham's time. Animals were the equivalent of writing a contract. Okay, I think this is my last one, but it's a little bit long. 33. So, and Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. So, word study, that word planted, amazing. So, Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba. Genesis 9. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. Word. Then, all the way to Genesis 2, and Yahuwah planted a garden eastward in Eden. And there he put the man who he had formed. So, very important when patriarchs planted things. Planted a vineyard, planted a grove, planted a garden. Okay, so Targums do, add way more context. And ironically, Jerusalem adds way more context. I'm going to read both. So, Palestinian says, and he planted a garden, but they put paradise. And I remember I did a study about that probably Genesis 2. At the well of the 7 lambs, and prepared in the midst of it food and drink for them who passed by. He returned, and he preached to them, confess ye and believe in the name of the word of the Lord, everlasting God. And for a change, the Jerusalem Targum adds way more. And Abraham planted a paradise in Beersheba, and prepared in the midst of it food and drink for those who arrived at the border. And they ate and drank, and sought to give him the price of what they had eaten and drunk. And he willed not to receive it from them. But our father Abraham discoursed to them of that which he had said, that the world was by his word. Pray before your Father who is in heaven, from whose bounty you have eaten and drunk. And they stirred not from their place until the time when he had made them proselytes, and had taught them the way of the everlasting. And Abraham prays and prayed there in the name of the word of the Lord, the God of eternity. Amazing, more detail. The Jerusalem Targum. Okay, so the word Beersheba mean well of the oath, which would make sense, right? They're making an oath, wells, or well of 7. Is a well dug by Abraham and so named because he and Abimelech had entered into a compact. So other times Beersheba is mentioned. When they reopened this well, Isaac gave it the same name in Genesis 26. It was also a favorite place of abode of both of these patriarchs. It is mentioned among the cities given to the tribes of Simeon. So Beersheba is given to Simeon in Joshua and 1 Chronicles. And it will mark, this was cool, Beersheba marks the most southernmost boundary of the nation of Israel during the period monarchy. This is the most southern part. This is the Florida. All right. Abraham's faith. I thought this was cool. This is more on Abraham's faith. Reference 1 Maccabees 2:52. Remember the deeds performed by our ancestors, each in his generation, and you will win great honor and everlasting renown. Was not Abraham tested and found faithful? Was that not considered as justifying him? Then the Hebrews 11:17. We all know this one. It was by faith that Abraham, when put to the test, offered up Isaac. He offered to sacrifice his only son. We'll get to that next week. Even though he had not yet received what he had been promised, and yet had been told, Isaac is the one through whom your name will be carried on. So he knew the promise and was told to sacrifice him. That didn't compute, right? We'll go into way more detail about that next week. Last thing I have. Abraham and Abimelech were did 7 times. There's the chapters and verses. And other words are repeated 3 times. Swearing and swearing, 7 new lambs, which I thought was cool in Beersheba. My throat's starting to get worse, but perfect timing. I'm done. Chapter 21. Hopefully you guys got comments, and off to Noel for his commentary.
Thank you, Michael. Hopefully I'm coming in clear right now. I switched my internet provider. Let me know if I'm choppy, guys. And Michael, you definitely brought your A game tonight. That was a lot of phenomenal observations and commentary. I definitely am not going to be topping that in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to be just making a few. I'm going to be gutting a lot of the scripture I put in those notes in there just for lack of time. I am not going to read through 30 pages right now, but there are some really interesting things in there. I will comment really quickly. There was quite a few things I would love to comment on, but one in particular that Michael brought up about Yitzhak and the possibility of a divine birth. And I brought that up a few weeks ago. There was, there was some kickback on that and stuff, but I'm not going to comment too much. I'm not going to comment more on it tonight because, believe it or not, I am in the early stages of actually preparing and writing a paper on that, and I think that there is a lot to be said there in that possibility, particularly perhaps how Paul viewed it. I think that that one article I read a few weeks ago, I think, was spot on when it was written from the Jewish perspective, and they actually claim that they actually dropped the entire divine birth of Yitzhak narrative when Paul came along. Because Paul was, in their words, actually, he seemed to subscribe to that and say that, there was two lineages put forward. One was Ishmael and one was Yitzhak, and that Yitzhak is a spiritual lineage, not of man, and that Ishmael is. And it's almost kind of like you can see the commentary Yahusha is giving to the Pharisees and the Sadducees. It's like, oh yeah, you're the children of Abraham. That's great. You're the physical genetic lineage. That means nothing to me, because it's always been about a grafting into a spiritual lineage from the very beginning. That wasn't something new. If this is correct, guys, it's not something new that happened post-cross. That there was always a grafting in. I want you to think about those implications. It doesn't destroy the gospel as people think. And they always go like, oh no, but what about the gospel? Like, if Yitzhak is a divine birth, again, I have not found any passage of any scripture or extra biblical scripture that's credible that claims that Abraham lay with Sarah and produced a child. It's always Elohim came in and did this. And that tells us that the true children of Yitzhak or of Abraham, I should say, the true children of Abraham through Yitzhak has always been not a genetic, but a spiritual. Just let that thought ferment in your minds, however you feel about it. So let's get back to some of these passages that I want to read. I'm not going to be going over all of them again. The first one, though, comes from the book of Jasher. I wanted to read. I don't know what I was thinking, putting like several pages in from Jasher. I am not going to read all this tonight. But let's start on chapter 21, verse 1, and see what we find here. And it was at that time, at the end of a year and 4 months of Abraham's dwelling in the land of the Philistines in Gerar, that Elohim visited Sarah. So there it is. And again, it doesn't say that Abraham knew his woman and that the child followed. It was Elohim visited Sarah. And Yahuwah remembered her, and she conceived and bare a son to Abraham. And Abraham called the name of his son, which was born to him, which Sarah bare him, Yitzhak. And Abraham circumcised his son Yitzhak at 8 days of old, as Elohim had commanded Abraham to do, and to his seed after him. And Abraham was 100, and Sarah 90 years old, when Yitzhak was born to them. And the child grew up, and he was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast upon the day that Yitzhak was weaned. Now, I want you to pay attention to this great feast here, because we don't really see this. So the book of Jubilees is going to go, the writings of Abraham is going to go more in depth into what this feast is. But then Jubilees has a really, really interesting thing to say. And Shem and Eber and all the great people of the land, and Abimelech, king of the Philistines, and his servants, and Pekol, the captain of his hosts, came to eat and drink and rejoice at the feast which Abraham made upon the day of his son Yitzhak being weaned. Now, this is interesting here because it is including Abimelech in here. We see Shem and Eber show up. Okay, they're righteous men. Abimelech. Now, we're going to see later in Jubilees, I think it's in Jubilees, that's nobody who was at this feast was uncircumcised. All right, so this is giving more clarity to what the writings of Abraham talk about, that Abimelech was a man of Yahuwah, despite not by appearances having the best reputation. Verse 6, and also Terah, the father of Abraham, and Nahor his brother, came from Haran, they and all belonging to him, and for they greatly rejoiced on hearing that a son had been born to Sarah. And they came to Abraham, and they ate and drank at the feast which Abraham made upon the day of Yitzchak's being weaned. And Terah and Nahor rejoiced with Abraham, and they remained with him many days in the land of the Philistines. I'm going to be jumping down to verse 12, but just again, no, it's pay attention to this party that's going on, because the writings of Abraham just has great commentary on this. All right, verse 12, what do we read? And Elohim was with Ishmael, the son of Abraham, and he grew up, and he learned to use the bow and became an archer. And let me jump over here to the Targum, if I could still find that somewhere here. Okay. So again, now, and Michael went over this commentary. I don't want to repeat all this, but the Targum gives kind of some interesting ideas on what was going on with why Hagar was removed from the scene. And we read in verse 9 as a reminder in the Targum, and Sarah observed the son of Hagar, whom she bare to Abraham, mocking with strange worship and bowing to Yahuwah. And then, let's see, where was it in here about the idols? Whatever, I'm not going to find it now. Oh, here we go. Let me read verse 15. And it was when they came to the entrance of the desert, they remembered to wander after strange worship, and Ishmael was seized with a burning thirst. All right, and drank of the water till all the water was consumed from the cruse, and he was dried up and withered in his flesh, and she carried him and was exhausted, and she carried him to the fear of his father, and he answered her not, and she laid the youth down at once under one of the trees. And she went and sat on one side and cast away the idol or the strange worship. So I don't know if Michael went into a lot of that, but it's kind of interesting. Was Ishmael here participating in idol worship? All right. So getting back to what Jasher says, verse 13 of chapter 21. And when Yitzchak was 5 years old, he was sitting with Ishmael at the door of his tents. And Ishmael came to Yitzchak and seated himself opposite to him. And he took the bow and drew it and put the arrow in it and intended to slay Yitzchak. And Sarah saw the act which Ishmael desired to do to her son Yitzchak, and it grieved her exceedingly on account of her son. And she sent for Abraham and said to him, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for her son shall not be heir with my son. For thus did he seek to do unto him this day. This is the Cain and Abel situation all over again. We see it again happening with Esau and Yaakov. But here we see that Yitzchak is the child of promise, that the seed's going to come through him. And Hasatan's coming in here. He's trying to bring an end to it. And so that's it. Luckily, Sarah, you read in some books that Adam and Hava, or Chua, they knew that Cain wanted to end Abel. In fact, they saw it in visions. They didn't do anything about it. Well, Adam, to be fair, Adam did separate their territories and be like, okay, you stay over here, you stay on this side, don't cross over, and they were both crossing into each other's lands. That's a whole nother story. But, so I guess you could say it's something similar, because Abraham's doing something similar to Adam here, right? He's like, okay, you know what? You want to kill my son? I'm going to separate you and put you over here. All right. I think that's all I'm going to read on Jasher. If you are following the document, it goes on and on and on. I don't know why I pasted all that. I'm not going to read through that. It's going to drive you guys crazy tonight. So I'm going to drop down to page 18 if you're following on the document. That includes you too, Josh. Page 18. This is the writings of Abraham, chapters 127 through 129. And these are really short chapters. So let's see what this says to compare to the Aramaic Targum as well as Jasher. We had dwelt in Gerar 9 months when the three holy men of Elohim again visited us, and Sarah gave birth to a son. And on the 8th day, he was, and again, the writings of Abraham does not clarify that Abraham, lay with his woman and then she conceived. It's just, she gave birth. And on the 8th day, he was circumcised according to the commandment of Yahuwah to me, and I called his name Yitzchak. The child grew, and when he was 3 years old, he was weaned, and I made a great feast on the day he was weaned. So here's the feast that the Jasher talks about. And Melchizedek, king of Shalom, with Eber, his heir, and Abimelech, king of Gerar, with his son, Abimelech, and Pharaoh, king of Egypt. So notice here that they're including Pharaoh of Egypt in this. It didn't say that in Jasher. It said Abimelech was there, but now Pharaoh's included. He came. And it says, of course, it confirms father to Hagar and Ishmael, and all the mighty princes of the land came to the feast which I prepared. For these were the men whom I loved with my brethren. And gets the brethren there. Verse 4, my father Terah also and my brother Nahor came into the feast, having heard that Sarah had borne a son. And we all rejoiced before Yahuwah for many days that my son Yitzchak had reached the age of weaning from his mother. And from that time forth Sarah and I introduced the lad into the tabernacle and began to instruct him in the mysteries of righteousness, that he might be prepared in his youth to enter into the Holy of Holies and be instructed there. Wait a second. It's saying, so we get through the party scene, and it says that at the age of 3, he was led into the tabernacle. Well, I thought the tabernacle wasn't built until the wilderness. Well, he's talking about the city of Shalom, that it had a tabernacle there, and it had a Holy of Holies, apparently, according to this text. Something easily missed, but something to pay attention to. For Shem had instructed me in the city of Shalom that children should be instructed in the temple from the age of weaning, which is 3 years old. And there's a passage in the Torah that talks about the boys and the girls who when they were weaned, they could come into the temple and learn the ways there. That they should be instructed in the Holy of Holies from the age of puberty, which is 12 years old, and that they should be endowed with power from on high from the age of maturity, which is 14 years old. Now, the Holy of Holies seems pretty controversial to me. Perhaps it was a little bit different then, because I don't think common people were entering the Holy of Holies. But again, this is the Melchizedek priesthood we're talking about. So I don't know. Maybe if you were a Melchizedek priest, you could enter. I don't know. But inasmuch as I had not journeyed into the city of Shalom until I was 10 years old, I was prepared for the blessing of Yahuwah's house in only a few years. Chapter 128. My son Yishmael I did not introduce into Yahuwah's house in his childhood, because he was not spiritual in nature. And so many texts agree on that. We see the same thing over and over again. Cain and Abel. Cain was not spiritual in nature. Well, he was spiritual, but not of the good nature. Abel was. And of course, Esau and Yaakov. Esau was not the good kind of spiritual. Yaakov was. So we see that here with Yitzchak and Yishmael. But he was a hunter, just like Esau was. Proficient in the use of the bow and other instruments of death. And also, I guess, the children of Cain. Nevertheless, Yahuwah was with Yishmael and blessed him for my sake in all to which he put his hand. When Yitzchak was 5 years old, he was sitting with Yishmael at the door of Hagar's tent. When Yishmael was sharpening his arrows, for Yishmael was 16 years old at this time, as they thus sat at the door of Hagar's tent, Yitzchak picked up one of Yishmael's arrows and broke it. A little bit different story to what happened here. Seeing this, Yishmael grew angry, and taking another arrow, he fitted it to his bow, intending to slay Yitzchak. But Yahuwah touched his heart so that he did not slay him. So, let me finish this. But Sarah saw this thing which Yishmael had intended to do to Yitzchak, and she was grieved at it. That night, when I entered the tent of Sarah, she said to me, let Hagar and her son be sent to dwell apart, for this day Yishmael sought to slay Yitzchak. Now these words caused me great sorrow, for I did not desire to see my family divided. So this is interesting, because we saw in Jasher that it gave the account that Yitzchak attempted to kill Yishmael by shooting with an arrow, but here we see that he was provoked. I mean, this sounds... Now, my children have never tried to murder each other, but this is the kind of thing that escalates if you have multiple sons. Like one of them, he goes and breaks another toy, and the other just goes and pounds him. And you're like, you get him in trouble for pounding the brother, but it's like, well, yeah, but he broke my thing first, right? So you see that he was provoked, that he broke one of his arrows. Obviously, it was completely unjustified, him trying to kill him after that. But it was basically what I, say, it's poking the bear. He was poking the very bear that was very bitter at him. But that night an angel of Yahuwah came unto me in a dream, saying, Hearken unto the words of Sarah, thy wife, and let Hagar and her son Ishmael dwell apart, lest harm come upon thy son Yitzchak, who shall be thine heir. Therefore I rose early in the morning and took Hagar and my son Ishmael into the deserts of Arabia, where dwelt a people who were friendly to me. And there I built with Ishmael a temple unto Yahuwah our Elohim, that his seed might always be kept in remembrance of Yahuwah. So that's interesting. He builds a temple there. We read a lot about Abraham building altars and wells and that kind of stuff. And Hagar and Ishmael dwelt among the people of the desert and were content. And Ishmael was a mighty hunter with the bow among them. And every year at a certain time I went and dwelt with my wife Hagar and with my son Ishmael. Now here we see the only diversion I've ever seen with the divorce is in the Aramaic Targum. And I don't know what to do with that, because in the Aramaic Targum it says that he gave her a letter of divorce. And yet I somehow missed that all these years reading the Targum, writing commentary on the Targum, so on and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see how it addresses it in the coming chapters. All right, so and when Ishmael was 20 years of age, his mother asked my consent to take him to the house of his father in Egypt. That's Pharaoh. For she longed to see her family again. Wherefore I gave them my blessing, and they departed into the land of Egypt, where they remained 1 year. And while they were in Egypt, Ishmael took to wife Meribah, daughter of Phain, son of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. All right, that's enough for that there. Now, Jubilee 16 is fascinating. In the details, it's very, very detail-oriented, a lot of numbers. But I want you to try to pay attention to this anyways. And this will probably end it on this tonight. I'm not going to read from the Legends of the Jews. If you're looking at the notes, you can do it yourself. But was this this feast that he put on for Yitzchak that we saw in Jasher and the Rise of Abraham? It talks about it in Jubilees. And was this the origins of Sukkot? So here's what it says, and starting in verse 12. And in the middle of the 6th month, Yahuwah visited Sarah and did unto her as he had spoken, and she conceived. Well, that's interesting. So according to Jubilees, and I'll be developing more of this in the future, Yahuwah visited Sarah. Okay. And she conceived. It doesn't say Abraham knew his woman. I mean, people can get upset at me as they want, for being the messenger and delivering this, but it says what it says. And that's all that I'm really interested in here. If I read that Abraham knew his woman and she conceived, I'd go with that. But I see time and again that Yahuwah is responsible for this. And it seems to fit with the whole theme. But anyways, I digress. And she bare a son in the 3rd month, and in the middle of the month, at the time of which Yahuwah had spoken to Abraham, on the festival of the first fruits of the harvest, Yitzchak was born. Okay, so on the festival of the first fruits of the harvest. Okay, so that's really interesting. You guys know what that is. And Abraham circumcised his son on the 8th day. He was the first that was circumcised according to the covenant, which is ordained forever. And in the 6th year of the 4th week, we came to Abraham to the well of the oath, and we appeared unto him as we had told Sarah that we should return to her, and she would have conceived a son. Now, these 3 angels, we've talked before, are the ones that are writing the book of Jubilees. And they were the ones that went to Sodom and Gomorrah and visited them and said, in 1 year's time, we will return, you have a child. And we returned in the 7th month and found Sarah with child before us, and we blessed him, and we announced to him all the things which had been decreed concerning him, that he should not die till he should beget 6 sons more, and should see them before he died. But in Yitzchak should his name and seed be called. I'm sure Sarah just loved that, hearing that he's going to have more wives and more children. And then all the seeds of his son should be Gentiles and be reckoned with the Gentiles. But that's talking about Ishmael. But from the sons of Yitzchak, one should become a holy seed. Well, there it is. One should become a holy seed and should not be reckoned among the Gentiles. So it seems like the seed of Yitzchak is one that you can become, right? A child of Abraham. For he should become the portion of the Most High, and all his seed had fallen into the possession of Elohim, that it should be unto Yahuwah a people for his possession above all nations, and that it should become a kingdom and priests and a holy nation. And we went our way, and we announced to Sarah all that we had told them, and they both rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And he built there an altar to Yahuwah, who had delivered him, and who was making him rejoice in the land of his sojourning. And he celebrated a festival of joy in this month 7 days. All right, so pay attention to this festival of 7 days, near the altar which he had built at the well of the oath. And he built booths. He's building booths at a festival of 7 days. I wonder what that might be. He built booths for himself and for his servants on this festival, and he was the first to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles on the earth, according to Jubilees. And during these 7 days, he brought each day to the altar a burnt offering to Yahuwah, 2 oxen, 2 rams, 7 sheep, 1 he-goat for a sin offering, that he might atone thereby for himself and for his seed. And as a thank offering, 7 rams, 7 kids, 7 sheep, and 7 he-goats, and their fruit offerings. Sounds like the 12 days of Christmas, doesn't it? Like, like 2 turtle doves and so on and so forth. And their drink offerings, and he burnt all the fat thereof on the altar, a chosen offering unto Yahuwah for a sweet-smelling savor. And morning and evening he burnt fragrant substances, frankincense and galbanum and stacte. I don't know what that is actually. And nard and myrrh and spice and kesem. All these 7 he offered, crushed, mixed together in equal parts and pure. And so pay attention to this sentence right here, verse 25. And he celebrated this feast during 7 days, rejoicing with all his heart and with all his soul, he and all those who were in his house, and there was no stranger with him, nor any that was uncircumcised. So this is what I told you before. This was the party he had, where Abimelech, Pharaoh, Haran, all these different people came. They're all uncircumcised. They're all apparently followers of Yahuwah, even though his father seemed to struggle with idols to the end of his days. I don't know if he ever repented of that. I'd have to check again, but it seemed like he struggled with that to the end of his days. And he blessed his creator who had created him in his generation, for he had created him according to his good pleasure. For he knew and perceived that from him would arise the plant of righteousness for the eternal generations, and from him a holy seed, so that it should become like him who made all things. And so it's like this holy seed that is coming forward. It's through the plants of righteousness that is coming, of course, through Yitzchak. So it's kind of like multi-layered there, right? That we are becoming like Yahushua HaMashiach. But he came through, of course, the seed of Yitzchak. And he blessed and rejoiced, and he called the name of this festival the Festival of Yahuwah, a joy acceptable to the Most High Elohim. And we bless him forever and all his seed after him throughout all the generations of the earth, because he celebrated this festival in its season according to the testimony of the heavenly tablets. And I think that's good for that. I think that's all I'm going to read tonight. And Michael, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Nothing else. Nope. All good.
Yeah, I mean, I have some more notes and stuff, but Michael, you covered it so well tonight, and I want to hand it back over to you guys, give you guys a chance to talk. What stood out to you in this? Did you take any notes? Michael asked a lot of questions. Handing it to you guys, what are your thoughts? And thank you, everyone, for listening.
One of the things that always stood out to me when I began my studies reading the Bible, of course, if you go to mainstream Christianity, which I did the majority of my life, it's very rare that any preacher will ever preach about incest. And to my knowledge, uh, I was always, when I read it for myself, that Sarah was Abraham's sister. I thought, well, that's bad. But if I'm not mistaken, the thing of incest and the law that occurred with that did not happen until Mount Sinai or thereafter, when Moses was actually giving the law to the people. Before that, I don't think there was any law or anything that was condemning any type of incest at all.
That's a really interesting um, point or discussion that I've had with different people as well. And I, at this point in my life, I don't have a solid answer on that. Does anybody else have any thoughts on incest pre-Sinai?
I think the difference was the purity of the people and their bloodlines and things of that nature. Then, as time goes on and more curses were added to mankind, the bloodlines became corrupted. That's the only thing I can think of.
Uh, well, I just want to insert one thing about uh, when I was doing research on the legend of King Arthur, and he had relations with his half sister, and in ancient cultures, it was not. I mean, we flip out, and in Celtic culture, it wasn't as big a taboo as what we've made it now. In the Celtic culture, they weren't full brother and sister. It was, and so we have a tendency to judge the past by the measuring stick of today, which is always a mistake. But there's still that question of, uh, I mean, it does say in the Hebrew that she was his sister, but the daughter of his father, not the daughter of his mother, in terms of Abraham. But the word for sister, the root word there is brother. So is it, there's a little bit of a question there. But as for the Torah, I think that there's plenty of evidence that they had the Torah. They had the Torah. I mean, you look at Judah's reaction when he finds out that he had relations with Tamar. And in fact, his whole behavior about Tamar, giving her first to one son and then to another son. I mean, where do you get that? Well, that's in the Torah. That if a man dies and he doesn't have any children, you give that wife to the next son. So that's Torah. And so there was plenty of Torah, and Abimelech's reaction tells me that he knew that it was adultery to take the wife of another man. Well, that leads me to think, well, that's more Torah. So I think that the Torah was given, yes, on Mount Sinai, but I believe that we've had it from the beginning, and that's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, and anything closer than first cousins in the Torah is considered incest. First cousins and beyond, okay, no problem.
Anybody else have any thoughts? And thank you for that commentary, Pamela. That was good.
Look at Arpeggio's question there.
Yeah, so evidence of 3 divine births. Actually, more than that. One of them, according to the Book of Enoch, guys, is Noah. If you read all the way to the end of Enoch, Noah came out like an angel, and in fact, there's multiple books that all complement that. One is I think it's called maybe Tales of the Patriarchs. That's the title given to it in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it literally says that he was an angel. The Writings of Abraham gives the same story, as does which other one gives it? I'm trying to think, but it appears that when Noah was born, his father freaked out, and he's thinking the sin of the Watchers is being repeated. This is not a human coming out. This is a illustrious, glowing angel with fiery eyes, and he goes and talks to Enoch about it. So there's one right there. And second Enoch, at the end of it, there is the first Melchizedek that is born. And if you guys recall that story, it happens to Noah's brother. His brother, he has a wife who he hasn't seen in 9 months, and she shows up one day really pregnant, and he freaks out, and she's like, I don't know what happened. I was never with any other man. This is, she wasn't a virgin, but it was like a kind of like an immaculate conception. She's like, you got to believe me. This is from Yah. And then the child is born. He's called Melchizedek. You have that account, and then you have the account apparently with Yitzhak. So there are a few times that there are strong inferences that at different points in history that Yahuwah kind of reached down and he inserted into the human race what I would call a pre-existent figure. If we get into pre-existence, okay, if you guys can swallow pre-existence and go, I think that's a thing, this is where the duality of our minds really battle here, because we're like, oh, I believe in pre-existence, but I don't like this idea that some of these pre-existent souls or angels can be inserted into the human race. Well, it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, there's either pre-existence or there's not. So all I have to say is I do think that there are multiple occasions where Hebrew scripture talks about this, and this is unique. It's not reincarnation. It's not like the idea of the Greeks and the Babylonians and others that a god is being incarnate amongst man. And all these, as I talked about a couple weeks ago, on all these occasions, it appears as though, oh yeah, and the other one was Yaakov, right? Jacob. Yeah, Yaakov. The other text I read that he appeared to be an angel as well, just like Noah was. But in all these occasions, they don't necessarily remember their life before. They're here, inserted for a reason, and however you guys take that is up to you. I'm not forcing anyone to believe anything. It's what I read in these texts, and it lines up and it matches. They match with each other. So
I would like to say even further that it brings new substance to a priest after the order of Melchizedek, and then Moses, Jethro. Was he not a priest? And I wonder if he was under that same connotation with that realm of things, and if Jethro could have actually been somebody else, a figure that was also established as such, but with a different name. I'm curious about that. That just came to me. And another thing, just going back a while ago, we had mentioned the family and the incest and whatnot, and I was thinking about that. In the olden times, and it's always in reference to, from my memory, it's in reference to somebody's nakedness, which we remind in like situations such as Noah's sons, that they looked upon his nakedness, meaning his wife. So it's, and when it comes down to that incestuous relationships and such, is there like specific reference to it being outside of the wording of someone's nakedness? I'm curious, and I'm sure there might be, but I can't recall that. So I just want to see if that can get refreshed in my memory if somebody's got the answer to that.
So I wanted to add about the Isaac being kind of I like divine or I don't remember how to word it exactly, like he would have been born from Yahuwah only. So my question with that would be, and I don't doubt Yahuwah had intervention because it shows there that there had to be something done to open her womb, but so even just looking at the text in Jasher, like Jasher 21:2 here from today's reading said, and Abraham called the name of the son which was born to him, and then it repeats, which Sarah bare to him, Yitzhak. And then also Jasher 21:11, it said, in Yishmael, the son of Abraham was grown up in those days. He was 14 years old when Sarah bare Yitzhak to Abraham. So it sounds like it's reiterated, and I'm sure I haven't gone through to just kind of specifically look for that wording in just Genesis and just the regular Torah too, but it sounds like it's attributing him as being Abraham's seed. So I don't see it, like, how would you reconcile it with that, to say, if he wasn't actually physically Abraham's seed? Like, I don't doubt that Yahweh had intervention with that. So that's one point. And the other note I wanted to make too about the incest part, that's very interesting, and it's always kind of, it doesn't sit well in my mind, probably most of us nowadays, because that's just clearly like, well, I mean, maybe not to the royals, like some people mentioned in the chat, but there was another example where something was mentioned about that. And it was where one of David's sons raped his half sister. And I forgot the name of that son, but it was he raped Absalom's sister. And what I recently read that, and just what stood out to me was what she said to him is, she said, don't do this. Don't take me by force. If you would just ask David, he would give me to you to be your wife. And I just remember reading that and being like, huh, that's really weird. Like, it just sounds weird to me. Like, you're still his half sister. Would he have given you to him? So I don't know if there's something we're missing in that, but yeah, that's just another interesting point. But that's all I've got.
That was, I think, another Tamar, a different Tamar, and Ammon, and yeah, and he gets murdered. I mean, he takes some time. Revenge is a dish best served cold, as they say. But yeah, he gets his revenge Absalom gets his revenge for his sister's sake. So
just to reiterate, I do believe Yitzhak is Abraham's son, just as much as it would be Yaakov would be Yitzhak's son, just as much as Noah is Methuselah was his father, right? Yeah. Just as much as, or Lamech, I'm sorry, Lamech. Just as much as he is his son. Just as much as Ham is the son of Noah's wife. And we've been through this before in all these different studies, and the same thing would apply to Ishmael. He was intended to be Sarah's son, that she was intended to take this concubine as the son was supposed to be attributed to her. That was the idea when she presented that, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yes, I think that you can both be a child or a son, but again, in the pre-existence realm, it's, there's still interventions that can happen, right? So again, I don't have all the answers, and but that's just my 2 cents, and I might be completely wrong about this. This is just something I'm looking into, and I think that there's a lot there. I think there's a lot to be said about the possibility that Yitzhak was a divine intervention.
So to clarify then, so maybe I'm not understanding. So do you think that he is still like Abraham's seed physically, but there was just divine intervention? And I don't have a problem with that. I think I see it that way too, but I'm just curious if that's what you see. And I do remember actually there was one other thing I was going to add on that. Is I do remember hearing a commentary about the from it's like a Jewish commentary, and they were saying that they think that there was that he was, I don't remember if it was Isaac or somebody else, was actually physically the son of or maybe it was Israel that they think was the son of Elohim, and they use that to interpret Isaiah 53 so as to deny the Messiah. So maybe that was a different thing. Yeah, so I'm just curious, is that what you mean? So you think that he is the seed of Abraham, but there was divine intervention?
Okay, so number one, it doesn't matter what I think, right? It doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what the truth is, right? And I'm trying to clarify. I'm thinking at this point because I am thinking both options. I think it's a very good possible. At least I was raised my entire life and always read it that Yitzchak was the physical seed of Abraham. However, I can also read this to say that he is the spiritual seed of Abraham. That's how Paul phrases it. And I think it is. I think that is a possibility worth pondering, considering the evidence we're seeing stacking up. At least that I'm seeing stacking up. That you have multiple texts that never once says that he went and laid with Sarah, and that he knew Sarah. They produced a child. It seems to be. It doesn't even say that necessarily that Elohim opened up her womb. It is that Elohim visited her and then she had a child. So just going with that, it seems very plausible that there is something else going on more than Yitzchak being the physical seed of Abraham. So again, it doesn't. I don't have a dog in this fight. It doesn't really matter to me either way. It doesn't capsize my faith in any way, shape, or form. It's just I find a fascination with seeking these things out, and I'm looking into that possibility. Again, it's a possibility, so it's not really what I believe. It's just what I see as a possibility. I'm being repetitive at this point.
My heart is inclined, but my memory is not intact to recall exactly how the lineage of, let's say, Matthew, how he reports lineage down from Christ and David and all the way down, but it's the lineage of the flesh, and yet the stopping points of that, David and Yishak, I wonder how many of those are in the lineage of the Melchizedek priesthood, because David is a strong character and a man after Yahuwah's own heart. So I think through the process of not direct, obviously, priesthood of Melchizedek ever mentioned specifically in any way that I can even discern, but at the same time, I believe he was added in by faith, as we all know. I mean, he is a man after his own heart, after all. But I think it goes beyond the direct lineage of being within the Abrahamic covenant, and of course being from Yeshua itself. So I'm curious if there's deeper connotations with those individuals that were named, particularly within the lineage, and more specifically at those stopping points within, if there's more to it than what we can recognize now.
Something else for everyone to consider as I look at this possibility, and again, I only really stumbled upon this because I was reading the Jewish commentary upon what they already advocated. I mean, they were claiming that the idea that Yitzchak was of a divine birth was very common in the first century amongst the rabbis, and that they were claiming that Paul was the very reason why, and the birth of Christianity and Yahushua was the very reason they dropped the whole plot, like the whole reason they probably dropped, Genesis 6 angels and all that stuff because of Christianity. Again, it doesn't make it right, but it's interesting nonetheless. I just want to point out that it is interesting to me that Satan was trying so hard to stop the sacrifice of Yitzhak. And, you know, we have to ask the question, what would have happened if Abraham actually went through with it? And there's multiple commentary. It seems that the belief would be, even the early Christianity, that had Abraham done it, that Yitzhak would have resurrected from the dead. And you know, I don't really know what all that would have meant. But it is interesting that Yitzhak was the one chosen for this test, and that, you know, of course, Elohim brought it to an end, and so on and so forth. But yeah, so James threw this in here. It's a great. I actually really like this passage. It comes from the writings of Abraham, and I'm glad he likes that book too, as I do. And it says, I gathered my family together, consisting of my 7 wives. Now, this is the context here, is he's on his way to Babylon. This is before he marries Sarah. He's going back to confront Nimrod. He says, I gathered my family together, consisting of my 7 wives, my 50 daughters. So he had 50 fleshly daughters, my 12 adopted sons. He had no sons up to this point. Of course, Yitzhak, as you guys know, was his first physical son, and 350 manservants whom Shem had sent with their families, being in all 6,370 souls. He went with over 6,000 people to Babylon to confront Nimrod and his father. So it's interesting. And again, I hope everyone understands, it doesn't matter what I believe or don't believe. It matters what the truth is, right? And I'm entitled to be wrong about some things, and I don't really, because I don't really, I guess I don't worry about that too much. I'm just really focused on being able to dig through these and find the truth. And because a lot of people, you know, I feel like they don't grow spiritually in these ways. They don't learn more things because they're so afraid of being wrong, and that handicaps them. Because a lot of denominations out there, they teach you, it's like, you got to believe these bullet points to be saved, right? It's you gotta subscribe. You gotta be Trinity. You gotta be this, that, you know. And the very notion that you would look into the Torah or the feminine Ruach HaKodesh or these kind of things, to some people, that's losing your salvation. Like, you cannot be saved and do that. I mean, that's literally the conclusion that many people already say about me, right? Many people already say about you guys. So I think we all need to be able to have the freedom and the grace to look into these pages and scriptures and these texts and be like, okay, what are they truly saying something that goes against what we were taught in our upbringing? Maybe our upbringing was right on these issues, but then again, maybe it was wrong.
Noel, you had mentioned that you felt like Satan or the devil was putting a lot of obstacles in the path of Isaac being sacrificed. I don't recognize that per se. I'm curious where you get that.
Well, Jasher puts a great deal of emphasis on that, as well as I think the writings of Abraham does too. I'd have to check Jubilees, but Jasher specifically, Satan he manifests himself in a number of ways. One is that he becomes like a river to try to stop Abraham from crossing, and he's trying to tempt both of them, and Abraham's like, don't listen to him, and Abraham's like, wait, I don't remember this river here, and so he crosses it, and he actually he actually causes the death of Sarah. I should probably, chapter 23 of Jasher. I should probably read that, but we'll get to that in probably next week or next time, because I will be commenting on that. But yeah, he puts a big emphasis on trying to stop it from happening.
Off topic note, what's the latest on the Roman study? I could ask you.
Oh, the Roman study. I know it's. I promise you guys, I was not stumped. I didn't get to chapter 7. I'm like, Paul did away with the Torah. It wasn't anything like that. It literally became what the Roman stuff. I wish, going back, I wish I had started with like Galatians, or like, I think that's only 5 chapters. It might be 6, but I would have been done with it. I would have had it out. And the Romans, is what, it's like 15, 16 chapters. and I got nearly, I think it's 16. I got nearly halfway done with it, and what happened is I took a couple weeks break, and that couple weeks break became a couple months or something like that. And at this point in time, because I'm so I'm trying to get several things done, and I'm trying to get out a second edition of Millennial Kingdom plus Mudflood, which is actually going to be a 3-part series now. It's going to be 3 books, the second edition, because it's ballooned so big. So you think about this. I'm trying to get 3 books done there. I'm trying to get my Mary Magdalene book written. I'm trying to get I'm trying to get a second edition of The Angel She Desired out, which is not actually for sale in my store. And then I'm trying to get, there was another one. Oh, yeah, The Seven Firmaments of Heaven, which is a little ways off from getting completed. But it's like maddening because I'm trying to work on all these things at once. And I'm finally like, I don't know. I'm just set Romans aside for now and trying to get through all these other things, particularly with the conference coming up and all that. So, and also, just my life is, I have almost half the time now to get done what I was doing before my baby girl Rivka was born, and of course, she's a delight, and I love her to death, and every minute with her. But nevertheless, I'm getting a lot less work done now, and so I'm actually putting my work out there. I think Rebecca just came in. I'm paying her to do work for me because I can't do it now. So, anyways, that's one of the reasons why Romans kind of fell by the wayside. So I do apologize to everybody who is looking for that. Hopefully, I can pick it up again and finish it. That is my desire. And I don't any additional info on the conference. Maybe someone else does. I have not heard anything. I'm sure Zen talks about it a lot. I haven't heard anything about it. I don't know if they've put together a schedule yet. I did request. That I told Zen and Company, his son Justin, and I said that I didn't want it to sound like I'm entitled or that I'm trying to, step beyond my bounds. But it didn't hurt to ask, and I just said, "Hey, is it possible that I could get 2 speaking sessions?" And I explained why. I said, the Millennial Kingdom, you guys want me to speak on the Millennial Kingdom and the Mudflood, and that's a huge topic. And I'm probably, 1 hour is going to be really hard to cover that. And I said, is it possible that I could get 1 hour to speak on the exoteric, just to go over like, okay, this is the Mudflood. This is what happened. Let's look at the 1800s. Let's look at all the things that happened. What was before that, all that. And then the second hour at another session to speak, on more of the esoteric and and what I think was happening during the 1,000 years and that kind of stuff. And they said that they'll consider it, as they look at the schedule. So I don't have a firm answer on that yet. And I don't have. I haven't booked the hotel yet either. I have to book the hotel myself. And the reason being is like I guess I should just go ahead and do it. That exactly with the tent. I'm trying to figure out: are we going to take our RV in? Like we might go park our RV nearby. So I just need to make a decision here real soon on that.
One of the things that never ceases to amaze me, it seems as though the majority of the world is either ignorant or has forgotten about how powerful the God of this world, Satan, is. And one of the examples that I often give people is the example of the mud flood. Now, there is evidence of this all over the entire realm that we live in, but yet there is absolutely no history about it. That's power. And that blows my mind. And there are thousands, literally thousands of people that are studying the mud flood, trying to find something, and there's nothing.
Yes, indeed. I agree. I don't know about you guys. I try to get in deeper conversations with people all the time. And here I am in Florida on the beach in this RV park, and we sit around the fire and we try to talk to people. I can't get anybody to talk about the Bible. I mean, people's eyes glaze over, they get upset, they whatever. I can't. And the times have sure changed, because it didn't used to be like that. I used to live in liberal California, and I could go off in the woods and I could find someone and start talking about the Bible, and they would talk back. Man, the times have changed in as little as a decade. It is so quickly. And so I just want to throw it out there. If they don't want to talk about the Bible, I just throw out the mud flood. I just throw it out there, and people like look at me like, at first they look at me like I'm crazy, but then you start to realize that they can start visualizing it, and they could picture all those windows and those buried doors and stuff all over. They've seen it, and they just they get real quiet and they want to change the subject, whatever. It's like awkward after that. But I'm like, I love to make it awkward, but it's people don't know what to do with that. Man, it just, that mud flood changes everything. It's going on 9:30 tonight, and I should probably go ahead and officially end this here soon. I do appreciate that everyone who came, and for you guys to hanging around, and we could stay in here and talk further. But does anyone have any last comments specifically on what we went over tonight? Anything at all? It could be on Pilot as well. Okay. Well, Josh, I think you're still here with us. If you want to cut the recording, and thank you all for coming. Shabbat Shalom one last time. And of course, we'll do this again next week. And I will be talking next week on the mud flood. It's going to be pretty epic. It's going to be called Children of the Mud Flood. And there will be some old and new information I'll be giving about, all the orphans and foundlings. I can't wait to give you guys that talk. So, Shabbat Shalom one last time, everybody, and class is dismissed, and you guys are free to talk about whatever you want.